Hi there, welcome to this pattern making class. My name is Bukola Bashomu and I am the creative director at Buki Bash Fashion. So today we're going to be learning about pattern making, and this is a pattern making class. So when people ask about pattern making, what is pattern making, how do you cut? Well, pattern making is about cutting. I'm going to be teaching you about patterns, how they are made, what they are used for, and the relevance of pattern making in garment construction. Cutting clothes, making clothes, they are very, 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 very important. And it helps you cut clothes quickly, fast, and with accuracy. That's the beauty of pattern making. Okay, so before we get ahead, I'm just going to introduce to you some of the tools that we're going to be using in the course of this training. So first, we're going to need, fundamentally, you're going to need your pattern making paper, which is you're going to be using the most in this training. Okay, so we're going to need the pattern making paper, or you could use the brown paper, but I always advise to use the pattern making paper because it has a white background, so you can easily draw on it and see whatever it is that you're constructing. Then you're going to also need your measuring tape to take measurements so that your measurements are perfect and excellent and accurate. And then of course you're going to need your pencil, your eraser, your sharpener, because your pencils have to be sharp. You're going to need your scissors, your paper scissors. You're going to need your curves. Yes, your curve set. Here I have 3 sets. And then I would like to say something about the curves. If you don't have this kind of curves, there are different kinds of curves when it comes to pattern making. There are certain curves that are done specifically for certain areas of the body. Like you have the armhole curve, the neckline curve, the hip curves. But these sets of curves can actually suffice for those areas, and I'm going to still talk about that later on. But I want to show you the armhole curve and the pattern master. So this is you can buy this later on. It's an armhole curve, but let me just remove it from the pack and show it to you so you can see the shape and see what it looks like. Yes. Okay, so pretty. This here is an armhole curve. So later on in the course of the training, we'll get to talk about it. But these curves are just, they are just good. They are good to go. So instead of having just so many different curves, and then you can have this. Then this is the pattern master. This one has rulers, curves, and all. But I don't want to make things complicated for you. So I want to really keep it simple so you can understand the process. And then of course you're going to need your ruler. This is my steel ruler. You can use a plastic ruler. Mine is a steel ruler. And then of course a marker, a black marker. It's not compulsory, but it will be good if you have it so that you can differentiate certain areas in the process of your pattern making. So those are basically the things we're going to be working with. It's going to be so much fun and I'm pretty excited. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a brief about pattern making, what pattern making is about. Let me just put this aside. What pattern making is about and what we're really trying to do when we say pattern making. Now, there are different kinds of pattern making. How would I put it now? Different ways of making patterns. Now, there's what you call the flat pattern drafting, where you actually construct using two-dimensional areas, where you use length and breadth, and then you try to make a 3-dimensional piece from 2-dimensional. So that's flat pattern drafting, meaning that you're drafting it from something that is flat. Now you have what you call the knockoff design, where to achieve your pattern, you actually have a garment that's already made, and then you lose it in pieces, and you iron each piece and each part, you iron it out to get a pattern, so you know how the garment was actually cut. So that's a knockoff. So that's actually another way of getting your design. Then another way of getting your pattern rather is draping. Yeah, when you see a tailor dummy and then they are putting pins and they are putting pins on the side and putting the fabrics on it. Yes, that's another type of pattern drafting method, and it's called draping, where you actually have the model or the tailor dummy or whatever it is, and you're actually draping the fabric or whatever it is on it to get the design that you want to make. That's another type of pattern drafting. And of course, digital pattern drafting, where you use softwares to draft the pattern. So the pattern is basically the pieces of the entire outfits, how they are arranged. I mean, one piece each one another: the arms, the body, the skirt, the front, the back, the flare, the add-ons, the ribbons, like every single tiny bit of that dress. So if it's a short dress, if it's a long dress, if it's a top, it's a ball gown, whatever it is, they all have a pattern. They all have each piece. So the pattern would be the entire the entire pieces of that dress. Whether it's going to have 2 sleeves or 1 sleeve, whether it's going to be monostrap or it's going to be, centralized. It's just basically all the pieces of the clothes. So when you put everything together, it becomes a pattern for a dress. So it's really an interesting journey. It's really an interesting time, and I'm very excited. Okay, so now I really need you to understand some basics. So I've listed to you all the types of pattern making techniques. So the technique I'm going to be teaching you is the flat pattern drafting technique. That's why we're going to be needing the pattern paper that I showed you earlier. So we're going to be using the flat pattern drafting technique. So we're going to be using the paper to draft patterns. So I'm going to teach you how to use the 2-dimensional flat paper to draft patterns for 3-dimensional clothing. That's basically what we're going to be doing. So right now I want to get you introduced to the 5 basic blocks. Okay, I have them here. So these are the 5 basic blocks. Like, these are like the foundation of all your patterns. Whatever pattern you want to make, everything must come back to the 5 basic blocks. And it is from the 5 basic blocks that you get every other part. So let's start with the first one. That's the back bodice. That's what it looks like. This is the back bodice. And here on the back bodice, you have the neckline, you have the armhole, you have the chest line, the waistline, and the darts. And this is the shoulder slope, the shoulder line. So that's number 1. And number 2, you have the front bodice. So this is the front bodice. This is what it looks like. You have the neckline, you have the shoulder slope, you have the armhole, you have the darts, and then you have that. So this is the front bodice. Okay, then number 3, you have the skirt back. So this is the skirt back. So here you have the waistline, you have the darts, the hip line, and the half length. So this is the skirt back. Then number 4, you have the skirt front here. This is the skirt front. So you have the waistline, the hip line, the half length, and the darts. Then you have, finally, you have the sleeves. So this is what it looks like, sleeves. So you have the back, the front, and the length of the sleeve, the bicep, the elbow, and the wrist. So those are the 5 basic blocks, and from the 5 basic blocks you get your entire pattern. So depending on the part of the body that you're working on, it's going to determine what part of the blocks you're going to use. But the next thing we need to do now is to understand what to measure, how to measure, so that we can construct the basic blocks from raw measurements. They're actually ready to wear basic blocks that are sold sometimes, so you don't have to construct the basic blocks from the scratch. But if you're into a business that has to do with making clothes, made to measure bespoke clothing, you need to be able to construct your customer's basic block from the scratch. And because people have different body types and measurement, but once you have the basic block, from the basic block you can now create any other style that there is that the customer might want. So part of the foundation of pattern making is your basic blocks, your measurements. And one of the things we need the calico fabric for is to actually test our block. We're going to get into that. So but the next thing we need to learn now is the body parts, body measurements, how to take measurements, what to use, and all that stuff, numbers, measurements, construction, geometry. All right, so let's get started with that. Right, so now that we're going to be learning body measurements, I'm standing. So I'm going to be the model, and then I'm also going to have a model. So I'll be able to explain properly to you how to take measurements and what parts to take. So you know what it's like on a real human live person, and then you also know what it's like if it's on a tailor dummy. So this is just a small dummy for me to be able to explain in detail how to measure and the measurements you're going to need in your pattern making process. So the first thing you need to measure is the shoulder measurements. Now the shoulder measurement is from one end to the other end. That is from this side of my shoulder to this side of my shoulder. So if you want to measure somewhere, you're going to take, and of course you may want to measure yourself. You may not have a model, so it would help you know how to measure yourself. You're going to take the measuring tape and measure from one edge of the shoulder to another edge. So if I was going to measure myself, this is what I would do. So I'll just take the measuring tape from this side to this side. It's going to cross a bone. There's a bone at the back. You can feel it with your hand. It's going to cross that bone and touch the other edge of my shoulder. Please do not let the measuring tape fall down like this for no reason. It has to be from edge to edge. So when you take the measurements from edge to edge, you would note that what I have for my measurement is 16. Now, before I continue this measurement, there may be some of you here that have no clue about this measuring tape and what the dimensions are. So before I go ahead taking all the measurements, let me just quickly show you this measuring tape I'm using and the calibration. So here I have inches. Inches is like the part that is wide, and then centimeters is the part that is small. So for my measurements, I'm going to be using inches. So here I have 1 inch, 2 inches, 3 inches, 4 inches, and so on and so forth. So when you want to measure, you follow the inches. For the course of this training, we're going to be using inches. So let me bring it closer for you to see. So now, this is 1 1/4. This is 1 1/2. This is 1 3/4, and this is 2 inches. So for every portion of the tape, you have a quarter. So you see, this is 1, this is 1 1/4, this is 1 1/2, this is 1 3/4, and this is 2 inches. So I'm showing you this because we are still going to do a lot of division, arithmetic, multiplication, addition. So it's important you understand this calibration, because by the time you start dividing and drafting your pattern, you may need 1/4, 1 3/4, 1 1/2. So it's very important you know all the quarters. So for this training, we're going to be using inches. So we can now continue with our measurements. Okay, I was saying before, the shoulder measurements. All right, so I already told you how to do the shoulder. So you just go from side to side. Okay, so let me show you that on the dummy. So let me just turn this around. So now the shoulder is from this side to this side. So if I want to measure here, I'd measure like this. So whatever it is I get. What I have here for this shoulder is 15 1/2. 15 1/2 inches. So, but for mine, I when I measured mine, I had 16. So for the dummy, it was 16 1/2. But for mine, 15 1/2 rather, for mine it was 16. So let's do it again. Okay, from here to here, my shoulder. So my shoulder is 16. So the next thing you need to measure is your length of back, or back half length. Either way is fine. So length of back means the length of your spine. That is from your spine here all the way to the point that the back goes in naturally. You can see this natural cinch in my back, yeah? Yes, that happens from the spine on the back that goes in. Let me show it to you on the dummy. All right, so look at this, yeah? Okay, so now look at this area. Look at where this place goes in naturally. You're going to measure from the back here all the way down. So that is the back half length. That is the length of back. That's the length of the spine. So you measure all the way down like this. So this model's length of spine is 14. So what I have here is 14. But let me measure mine and let me show you how you measure. Because I'm showing you on the dummy and on a real human person. So I'm going to put the tape at the back of my neck. And then I'm going to stop the tape at the point where my waist cinches in naturally. And what do I have? Okay, that will be here. Ta-da! Wow, I have 16 1/2. Like, now, notes for regular size people. Sometimes when you don't have the measurements, the length of back and the shoulder are usually approximately equal. That's for a regular size person. It's not apply. It doesn't apply in all cases. I just thought I should drop that tip. Okay, so for me, my shoulder was 16 and my length of back was 16 1/2. Okay, so the model was back half length was 14 and then the shoulder was 15 1/2. So we understand that. So the shoulder and the length of back, or back half length, any one is fine. So the next thing we need to measure is the chest, the bust area. So now that's the fullest part of the body. Like if I turn my side now, you can see the peak of my bust here. So if I want to take my bust measurement, I'm going to take the tip round my bust. It has to come high up. it has to come high up, and then it's always advisable to end it on the side. End the tape on the side so that the bust sits on the fullest part so of the bust. So if I was going to take my measurement now, oh, my bust, what's my bust? My bust is 40. Wow, I used to think my bust was 38. Oh, let me take the bust measurement of the model. Okay, so now I'm going to do the same thing on this model here. Okay, so the bust model over the bust is 34, so it's the same process. So that's the chest measurement. So the next measurement is the waist. Now this is where you take the waist measurement. There's what you call the natural waistline, because different people take waist measurements from different places, but you need to take your waist measurement on the natural waistline. What is the natural waistline? The natural waistline is that part of your body that cinches in naturally. For example, if I tie this measuring tape on my waist here, there's a part of my body that cinches in naturally. Yeah, that's where I'm going to measure as my waist. This is the waist measurement. That part of your body that cinches naturally. Why do we do that? Because that's the area that actually aligns with this side of the body that goes inside. So while we're doing the construction, you'd understand the importance of why you should measure your waist here. You know, for some people, it's considered as the tummy. You know, in the body is the tummy, but in measurements, it's the waist. That is the part that, you know, goes in. You can see we measure the length of back from here all the way down, and this is the part that goes in. So that is the part that is also supposed to align to the place your waist cinches naturally. So I'm just going to use this, you know, and measure my waist. So what do I have on my waist? Seems seems like I've added some weight in the last few days. Alright, so here we have, okay, my natural waist cinch is 34, so I have 34 on my waist. So let's check out the model. Now if you look at this model, you can see the part that cinches in naturally. This is the waist. So you measure here, and then here we have 24 and a half for this waist. So I hope we are following these measurements, because measurements is key. We're going to be doing construction, and the numbers are very, very important for accuracy and perfection in fit. So the next point to measure is your hip. Where do you measure your hip? Where is the hip? You measure the hip here, the fullest part of the body. So now you can see this is my hip. So I'm going to take the tape around my hip area, and then I'll make the measurements end by the side. So here, my hip measurement is 45. So it's the fullest part of the... So you can see that the tape is not slanting. It's straight, you know, all the way round. So my legs are together. Yeah, even though I'm wearing a jean, but it's tightly firm to my body. So, and it's ending on the side. So my hip is 45. But if I measure on my model... what do I have? You can see, you look at this. This is the fullest part of the bum. So that's where you measure on. Very important, very crucial. So you measure. Okay, so you measure round, and here I have 33 and a half for the model. So now that is also key. So now we've measured the length of back, we've measured the shoulder, the bust, the waist, and the hip. So the next thing we move to the next set of measurements. Now we need to measure the bust of the point of the bust. That's the peak. So now I usually measure my bust point from the side neck point. So this is the side neck point of this model. That's here. From the side neck point. From the side neck point, you measure all the way to the peak of the bust. Let me turn this to the side so you understand what I mean. So from this side neck point, you measure all the way to this peak. So I'm going to put the tape. I'm going to put this tape on this side neck point and stop at the peak of the bust. Let me make sure my tape is straight. Yes. So if the bust point here is 10 inches. Alright, let me do the same for my body. So if you're measuring it on a human being, you put it just by the side of the neck here. And then you measure. Okay, my bust point is 11 and a half. You know, I'm really doing it on like 2 different bodies so that you understand that for different people it varies. You know, so I'm standing as a live model, and I'm using, you know, this as a dummy model. So now after doing that, you maintain your hand on the side neck point. Don't shift. you measure the under bust point. You continue like this. You take your measuring tape like this. Okay, let me just do it this way so you can see it better. So this is the bust point. Mine is 11.5. Then I go to my under bust point. See, I hold on to this tape. And now what do I have? I have 15.5. And then I continue on that part, holding on to the tape. And then I measure all the way to my waist point, where I tied, where there was a point where I tied the tape on my natural waistline. Yes, that is my shoulder to waist. And what I have here is 20. What I have here is 20. So that 20 falls on this area. Yeah, 20. It falls on this area. So now I've taken 3 measurements. Let me do it on a dummy so you could see what I did properly. So I have my bust point here, then I have my under bust point here, and then I hold my tape, and then I have my waist point here. So my waist point here is 17. At the back I measured 14, but in front I measured 17. So you can see that there's a difference between the half length of the front and the half length of the back. So now this measurement I just took from the side neck point to the waist in front is the half length of the front. The one I took with my spine at the back is the half length of the back. You're going to understand the importance of this during construction, because the front and the back is not the same. In the front you have the bust, at the back you don't have the bust. So the journey is going to travel will be longer. So that's why most times the front half length and the back half length are usually different. And so the difference between the front half length and the back half length is usually used in construction to get a perfect front body cut. So next we move to the next measurement, which is the skirt length. So when you want to measure the skirt length, now you begin from your natural waistline here. Where your waist cinches in naturally. So that's where you put your tape. On the dummy is here. You measure here, from here all the way down. So I would measure from here, from this point all the way to my knee. When I get to my knee, I'll take note of the measurements. You measure to your ankle. You also measure to the floor. But for the purpose of the drafting of the basic block, there is a standard half length to use that is just ideal. And then for your sleeve, you would also begin your measurements from here. So you begin measuring from this point all the way to your elbow, all the way to your wrist, straight. So whatever measurements you get, you mark it in inches. So you measure to your, to your short sleeve. That's the biggest part. The short sleeve, the elbow, 3/4, and then the sleeve. So you measure each point and then you mark. And then afterwards, you're going to measure the bicep. That is the width of the hand. How wide is it? So you take your measuring tape round your arms, the biggest part of your arms. Yeah. You take your measuring tape, you place it round that, and then you mark the measurement. Make sure that you have at least one finger in the tape. Let me try. I'm trying to measure myself, so it's like it feels a bit difficult, but I know some of you may not have any model and you may want to use yourself, so I'm trying to show you how you can do it. So if you don't have any model, you'll be able to use yourself as your model. So you can actually measure yourself and use yourself as the model. Okay, so my bicep is with one finger in. I'm trying to adjust my tape. Okay, my bicep with one finger in for ease is 14 inches. So you do the same for a lower area, maybe somewhere around here. You do the same for your elbow. When you do that with one finger in, remember, you do the same for your mid area. You do the same for your wrist with one finger in. So here is 7. So basically that's the measurements. Finally, one more measurement that I didn't tell you was the bust span, nipple to nipple here. My bust span is 8. Let me measure this. Okay, here I have from here you measure from the peak, from peak to peak. From peak to peak for this is 6 inches. So for everyone it varies. So I believe that you are taking note of all the body parts, the measurements, because we're going to be using this in construction. Okay, so one final part that I would like to take advantage of to teach you now is how to measure for pants. Because right now I'm wearing jeans, although my full body ain't showing, but I'm just going to show you. It's basically the same thing. It's just some differences. So to measure your thigh, you're going to measure the biggest part of your leg. Just like when you're measuring your arms, yeah, you're going to measure the big, so because it's a limb, so this is like your arm, and then this is a limb. So for mine, the biggest part of my thigh here, right here, is 28. So I have my thigh measurements. Okay, so now my crouch. Now there are different ways of measuring crouch, but trust me, I just measure from here. I just measure from the belly button all the way to the opening of my legs. So when I measure that, I get 11. So you can measure all the way to the back, like this, from your nipple to your back half length. That's another way of measuring, but that involves a lot of calculation and it could be complicated. But just the easier way is just to measure from your belly buttons all the way down to after your thigh, about 2 inches after your hip. Another way to measure is to sit on a chair, and then you take a ruler and then you measure straight. You sit on a chair, you take a ruler and then you measure it straight from the edge. So whatever measurements you get would be the measurement of your crouch. So you can look into more ways of actually taking crouch measurements, but I always like to keep it simple. Just take your measurements from your belly button and you measure down, and that would do. So, and then of course your length, always measure from the inside of from the natural waistline, yeah, to make it easier. I just want to keep things really, really, really simple for you guys. And then of course, the same way you measured your bicep, you could also measure your thigh. So you measure the biggest part, you measure above your knee, and you also measure around your ankle. So, and then when you are measuring, always make sure you leave some ease. And even if you measure exact, just note that, oh, you measured exact, so that by the time you want to use it in construction, you can use it as a point of reference. Okay, so with that, we can now begin learning construction of the 5 basic blocks, since we understand measurements. So I expect you to take your measurements, write it down, or take the measurements of your model and write it down, because for my basic blocks, I'm going to be constructing using my measurements. I'm going to be the model, so I'm going to be showing you the results of everything I've done with the construction. So do your measurements, construct yours, and then do your measurements, you learn how to construct your body measurements, but take it up from there.